The first response, which critical scholars were kind of hate, but I think it's an important one, is the theological response. The irony is, if you're reading, pick up Jacob Stromberg's book on Isaiah. About page 2, he's like, some people don't, accept the diversity of Isaianic scholarship, and he kind of writes them off saying, for theological reasons. Well, I think theological reasons are pretty good reasons.
Right, but that goes back to the presupposition of that dividing line or dividing wall between biblical studies and theological studies. Yeah. Where they would want us. There are many people that have this idea, well, we study the Bible on the Bible's own terms and we don't bring any theological construct to it. We just go where we go. But that, we've discussed in the past of why that's an illegitimate pursuit. But that's what's behind this view.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're very clear about it. For example, Simler, kind of the early historical critical school guy, he would say, I'm here to discuss religion, not theology.
Right.
What he meant by that is, like, we're not talking about the dogmatic aspect at all. All we're concerned about is that historicist approach to the Bible.
Right.
And that's still alive and well today.
Mm-hmm.
And so the theological argument, this is kind of what we've been doing the whole time, where the biblical view of what a prophet is, the biblical view of how the Bible came into being, undercuts at its core this critical method. This critical approach. And, one thing, Richard Schultz, Old Testament scholar, who's pretty prominent for defending the unity of Isaiah from the conservative perspective, he has a pretty good analogy where he says, after he's reflected some on these critical schools, that it seems like the critical approach to Isaiah is like scratches on a camera lens, where it produces rather than discovers the breaks in the text. And so, the image, if you have a scratch on a lens, any picture that you take is going to have that scratch in it. And I think that's pretty an accurate description of their work. They have these presuppositions in place, and now everything they're going to do is going to reflect those things. And so what we need to do is have a biblical foundation, a biblical view of inerrancy and what the prophets are there to do in receiving the word of the Lord and carrying it to his people. And if you have that, then a lot of their considerations are easily dealt with. And now the downside to Stromberg and the critical deal is say they just have theological reasons. It's like, yeah, we have theological reasons. So do you. But we also have reasons looking at the text. We have theological reasons, and we have reasons as we're looking at it. So if you're looking at the text of Isaiah, numerous times, especially in the first half of the book, Isaiah is mentioned as the explicit originator of this prophetic message. Isaiah 1:1, Isaiah 2:1, Isaiah 13:1, Isaiah chapter 20, verse 2, 31, verses 6 and 7. All of these places, Isaiah is explicitly mentioned as the one from whom this prophetic message comes. So if you are, they would say there's some sort of, pious fraud or something like that. But the unity of Isaiah view, I think, is really the only one that takes those superscriptions seriously and takes the text as it stands seriously, because as we were saying earlier, there is no other superscription in the book. There is no other, thus says the Isaianic school,
right?
That, passing on this tradition. Now, another thing, especially in terms of Isaiah 13:1, that's the introduction to the oracle against the nations, and especially the one against Babylon. So Isaiah 13:1 says explicitly that this oracle concerning Babylon comes from the historical person Isaiah. And so to counter that, I think, does violence to the text. So the one Isaiah view is the only one that takes the claims of the text seriously as coming from the prophet Isaiah himself. So that's reason number 2 out of our perfect 7. Number 3 is a thematic and literary unity to the book. Here's what I mean by that. Thematic unity is that the book of Isaiah expresses a lot of the same themes in a lot of the same ways throughout every aspect of the book. One of the most prominent themes in the book of Isaiah, the Holy One of Israel. occurs about 30 times in the book. Now, I think it only occurs 36 times in the entire Old Testament, so it's a key theme for the prophet Isaiah. And it occurs evenly distributed in each of the proposed sections. So each section has an emphasis on the holiness of the Lord, just as each section has an emphasis on the Lord controlling whatsoever comes to pass, having a universal dominion, all of these sorts of things. Another prominent theme in the book of Isaiah is a theme of judgment unto restoration, where the road to salvation for the prophet Isaiah is through the judgment of the exile. Another way that this is expressed is maybe suffering unto restoration, exile unto restoration, or even humiliation unto glorification. In fact, the entire book of Isaiah kind of reflects this transition from humiliation to exaltation. If you're looking at the initial parts of the book, the proclamation against Israel in chapters 1 to 5, their sin, the historical situations detailed beginning in chapter 7 into chapter 39, and how Israel is continuously apostate. And then you get to the end of the book, and it has this beatific vision, you could say, about the new heavens and the new earth. And so, like, the whole book is structured as kind of a suffering unto exaltation structure. And if you lose any part, then you miss that flow of the book. And this is even seen in the divisions where the prophetic or the critical scholars talk about. So Isaiah 39, and we're delving into literary stuff here. Isaiah 38, 39 begins a transition from the Assyrian attack from Sennacherib toward a new context of envoys coming from Babylon that Hezekiah shows the wealth of the temple to, that produces the context for Babylon coming later and invading Judah. And then the important point I want to draw here, so the critical scholars say there's a division between Isaiah 39 and Isaiah 40, but I want to say Isaiah 40 doesn't make any sense without Isaiah 39. So literarily, if you just cut that out and you're in Isaiah 37, then this context of the Lord miraculously and his great power saving Judah from the hand of Sennacherib doesn't produce a context literarily to then have Isaiah 41, comfort, comfort my people, says your God. What does? The prophesied Babylonian exile, right? So Isaiah 39 provides the context for everything that happens in Isaiah 40 to 66 and that Babylonian perspective that comes forward.